When people look back at Spider-Man No Way Home, they remember the roar of the crowd. They remember the impossible sight of 3 different eras of cinema colliding in a single frame. It was a cultural event, a celebration of nostalgia, and a massive win for the MCU. But if you look past the multiverse chaos and the flashy villains, you'll realize that the movie is hiding a much deeper, more personal story. On paper, this is Tom Holland's journey, his transition from a kid in a high-tech suit to a man who understands that great power demands a heavy price. But if you measure the movie by its emotional weight, by its scars, and by its need for healing, you'll find that No Way Home secretly belongs to Andrew Garfield. To understand why, we have to go back to 2014. But before we begin, don't forget to like the video to help it reach more people, and make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any upcoming videos. We have to talk about the ending that wasn't an ending. When The Amazing Spider-Man 2 closed its curtains, it left Andrew's Peter Parker in a place of pure, unadulterated darkness. He didn't just lose a battle, he lost his soulmate. He watched Gwen Stacy fall, and despite his speed and his webs, he was a fraction of a second too late. That snap of the web wasn't just the end of a character, it was the end of a franchise. Andrew Garfield was essentially fired from being Spider-Man before he could ever process that grief on screen. For 7 years, his version of the character was frozen in time, stuck in that graveyard, stuck in that mourning suit, stuck as the middle child of the Spider-Man who never got to finish his story. When he steps through that portal in No Way Home, he isn't just a fun cameo. He is a man who has been bleeding for 7 years. While Tobey Maguire's Peter feels like a retired legend who found peace, Andrew feels like a man who is barely holding it together. He is fast, he is funny, and he is charming, but there is a frantic energy to his performance. It's the energy of someone who uses humor to mask a hollow core. He tells the other Peters that he stopped pulling his punches. That is one of the darkest lines in the entire MCU, yet it's delivered with such a haunting casualness. It tells us that without a Gwen to keep him grounded, he became the very thing Peter Parker is always afraid of becoming, a vigilante fueled by rage rather than hope.
This internal darkness is what makes his interactions with Tom Holland's Peter so vital. He isn't just there to help fight villains, he's there as a living warning. When Tom's Peter loses Aunt May and is consumed by a desire for revenge, Andrew is the one who truly sees him. Toby offers wisdom, but Andrew offers a reflection. He knows exactly where that path of vengeance leads because he's been walking it for years. You can see it in his eyes every time he looks at Tom, a desperate, silent plea for the kid not to end up like him. He knows that once you cross that line, once you let the rage take over, the mask doesn't feel like a hero symbol anymore. It feels like a prison. This leads us to the dynamic between the 3 Peters on the scaffolding. It's lighthearted on the surface with the "I love you guys" and the back cracking, but pay attention to how Andrew carries himself. He's the most eager to belong. He's the one seeking validation, calling himself lame compared to the others. It's heartbreaking because he's projecting the way the real-world audience viewed him for years. The middle guy, the one whose movies weren't as beloved as Toby's or as successful as Tom's. He's not just fighting for the multiverse, he's fighting for a sense of worth that was stripped away from him when his own series was cut short. And then the movie stops being a spectacle and becomes a miracle. The moment MJ falls off that statue, the world slows down. For the audience, it's a high-stakes action beat, but for Andrew's Peter, it's a rip in time. It's 2014 all over again. The camera framing, the way she's plummeting through the air, it's a direct mirror to Gwen's death. This is the moment where No Way Home transcends being just another Marvel movie. When Tom is knocked away by the Goblin and Andrew realizes it's up to him, you see a shift in his entire being. He doesn't hesitate, he dives. The way he catches her is different from how he tried to catch Gwen. With Gwen, he stayed above and sent a web down, a thin, fragile connection that snapped. With MJ, he dives with her. He bridges the gap with his own body. He puts himself in the fall. And when they land and he realizes she's breathing, the look on his face isn't one of "I saved the girl." It's a look of total, shattering realization. He didn't just save MJ, he saved himself. He finally broke the cycle of failure that had defined his life for nearly a decade.
That silent moment after the save, where he asks her if she's okay and his voice cracks, is the most honest piece of acting in the history of the Spider-Man franchise. He isn't crying because he's happy. He's crying because he's relieved of a burden he never thought he'd lay down. In that single breath, the Amazing Spider-Man was finally allowed to heal. The movie gives him the one thing that real life rarely does, a chance to do it over and get it right. It's a moment of narrative surgery, reaching back into the past to fix a broken hard. But the brilliance of this redemption is how it changed the conversation outside of the theater. Before No Way Home, Andrew Garfield was often discussed with a sense of what if? What if the writing had been better? What if the studio hadn't interfered? He was the Spider-Man of a failed era. But after this movie, the narrative shifted instantly. People weren't just happy to see him, they were rediscovered by him. They realized that his Peter Parker was perhaps the most human of them all because his pain was the most visible. He didn't have the steady life of Tobey or the billionaire support of Tom. He just had his scars. This shift in public perception is a rare phenomenon. Usually when a franchise is rebooted, the previous actor is moved to the history section. But Andrew's performance was so soul-bearing that it forced the world to reevaluate his entire duology. Suddenly, fans were campaigning for The Amazing Spider-Man 3. They weren't doing it just for the action. They were doing it because they finally saw the character the way Andrew always did, as a man who suffers deeply but chooses to be good anyway. No Way Home didn't just give him a cameo, it gave him a second life. It's easy to get lost in the who is the best Spider-Man debate. It's a fun conversation for the internet, but it misses the point of why this character matters. Spider-Man is the hero of the Everyman because he fails. He loses his job, he loses his mentors, and sometimes he loses the people he loves most. Tom Holland's trilogy is a masterpiece of growth, showing a boy becoming a legend. But Andrew Garfield's presence in this film reminds us that even when you fail, even when you lose everything and spend years in the dark, you are still a hero as long as you keep trying to save people.
To truly appreciate why Andrew stands out, you have to look at the contrast in how these three men move and fight. Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man is like a sturdy oak tree. He's seasoned, heavy-handed, and fights with the grace of a veteran who has seen it all. Tom Holland's Spider-Man is agile and tech-integrated, moving with the energy of a teenager who is constantly adapting. But Andrew moves like a live wire. He's lanky, twitchy, and incredibly fast, but there's an underlying desperation in his movements. In the final battle at the Statue of Liberty, he isn't just fighting to stop the villains, he's fighting like he has everything to prove and everything to lose. This brings us to the quietest yet most profound realization of the film. No Way Home is titled as a reference to Tom Holland's Peter Parker losing his home, his identity, and his connection to the world. But for Andrew Garfield's Peter, he had already lost his home years ago. His home wasn't a place, it was Gwen. By stepping into this multiverse and helping this younger version of himself, Andrew finally finds a way back to the light. He finds a different kind of home, a brotherhood. The scene where the three of them are working in the lab together is more than just a science experiment. It's a support group. It's the first time in Andrew's life that he doesn't have to carry the weight of being Spider-Man alone. When the movie finally ends and the spell is cast to make everyone forget who Peter Parker is, it's a tragedy for Tom. He loses his friends, his girlfriend, and his life as he knew it. But for Andrew, as he fades back into his own universe, he isn't leaving with a loss. He's leaving with a win. He goes back to his world no longer as the man who stopped pulling his punches, but as the man who caught the girl. He goes back with the knowledge that he is amazing, not because he's perfect, but because he's resilient. In the end, No Way Home succeeded where so many other nostalgia movies fail. It didn't just use Andrew Garfield as a prop to make us remember the past. It used the past to heal the present. It took a character who was defined by a tragedy and gave him a legacy of hope. It reminded us that no matter how long you've been stuck in the graveyard of your own mistakes, there is always a chance for a new dawn. So while we will always remember this movie for the portals and the suits, the image that will truly stand the test of time is a maskless, teary-eyed Peter Parker holding a girl he barely knows and finally breathing a sigh of relief for a girl he couldn't save. That wasn't just movie magic, that was closure. And for Andrew Garfield, it was the greatest victory he ever won. Thanks for watching to the end. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. I'll see you in the next one. Take care.